Dallas, at least on the offensive side of the ball, but a huge, huge show-me week for the Seahawks ahead. Kevin Burkhardt will be on the call for Fox, one of my absolute favorites, and kind enough to take some time to join us right now. Kevin, good morning. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Well, it's always good to be back with two of my favorites, I appreciate you having me back on, guys.
What are you anticipating Sunday afternoon down there in Santa Clara, Mr. Burkhardt?
I just don't know, Brock, how the 49ers are going to be stopped right now. And look, it's easy to fall in love with the last game, right? I mean, they pummeled Philly. I'm certainly not giving up on Philly because they're 10-2. So you come off that, but I think if you just look at their body of work and what they're doing and what they've done against Seattle, here's the big issue for me Sunday is, in simplest terms, the 4 games that they have played with Brock Purdy against the Seahawks, they have done whatever they've wanted on offense. And defensively, Geno Smith has had no time, no chance to throw the ball. He got sacked six times the last game. The pressure has been out of this world. Those are the things that I just have to see to believe for Seattle. And it's a tough task, right? There's nobody in the NFL that's been able to stop these guys. They're winning games by 2 touchdowns a week. So I think if I'm picking one thing, though, Brock, they got to find a way to give Geno some time. They really do. They got to find a way to keep that pressure at least normal for them to have a chance.
Well, that seems easy. Just that. Yeah. That's all they have to do. All right. Well, then great. Good interview. We'll go talk to Pete, and we'll tell him all he's got to do is just slow down the Niners pass rush.
Yeah, it's been easy. Everyone else has figured it out too, as you can see in the NFL. It's no problem.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. All right. Well, so we got a strategy now. Before we go to San Francisco, and I know we want to talk a little bit more about that team, but just sticking with the Seahawks specifically for a minute. Pete was fairly upbeat after their loss to Dallas last week. We interview Pete on usually Mondays, in this case Friday after a game, and he was pretty upbeat and was happy about the way his offense played and happy about some of the steps forward they took. I don't know whether everybody in the audience necessarily felt the same way. What did you see from them as you started to prepare for this game? Did they take a step forward last week?
Well, to be honest, last time our broadcast crew had Seattle was week 2 when they won in Detroit in overtime. And that, to me, watching back their games, is the last time the offense looked like that. So I did watch it at home. I was like, oh, okay, this is the offense, right? Geno looks good and receivers making plays and contested catches. And I was encouraged by that. Look, I think there's a number of factors why, and you guys know too, you're in the middle of it and you talk to them, you talk to Pete every week. But I think it was really encouraging to see a couple things. Geno healthy, guys making plays. I think for one, I know it hasn't been the same as last year, but to me, Geno Smith in last year, his signature were deep plays. His signature were those deep balls, and they just haven't been there this year for a multitude of reasons. So I just thought the aggressiveness, the throws, he had a little time to throw. I thought that was a good sign. Now, whether they continue it this week, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, Dallas's D is no slouch with that pass rush. So I'm with Pete. I did think that was encouraging, and now they've got to continue that.
Well, I'll give you 43 seconds of that, KB. This was Pete with us, not only going so far as to say, hey, we took a step. It is when we get to the playoffs, we are going to be an impact team. Here was Coach Carroll with us last week.
We're pissed. We know how hard it is. You want to get ready for a football season, get tough now. This ain't going to be easy. The next couple steps here along the way here are just as difficult as they can be. But this doesn't tell the story of the season. What tells the story of the season? How this thing ends. And when you get to the finish and how we wrap this thing up, we got to get some games here. We almost picked one off last night. We got to pick one off this next week or the next week, and we got to keep on going. And when this team makes it in the playoffs, which you may think I'm freaking crazy to be telling you that, when this team makes it in the playoffs, we will be ready. We will have been through all of it. We will have seen everything you can see. We will have toughed our way through it. We will have learned the lessons. We'll be as ready as you could possibly get. I kind of like to see what that's going to be like. I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Kevin, I have used those words and kind of compared it to the other team in town, and that being the University of Washington with 7 one-score wins, battle-tested in every way, in weather, in environments on the road, a brutal gauntlet that they went through, and they came on the other side, the number 2 seed on the college football ranks. Is there something to be said in your experience of covering this NFL league as well, that a team is battle-tested, going through everything, this brutal gauntlet of a schedule right now for the Seahawks? If they can get through it and pick off one of these wins, do you see a team that in the playoffs could make some noise?
Yeah, look, I think, Brock, in the reality of it, in my eyes, I still think that San Francisco, Dallas, and Philly are a notch above everybody else. That doesn't mean that they can't be beat. I certainly do. And I think San Francisco is the best of the bunch. That's not breaking any news stories. But I think Seattle is battle. And here's the one thing I think when you think about Seattle and you think about Pete Carroll, every time you think they're not going to win a game, every time you think that they're done, those are the games that they always win. I mean, they've never had a 4-game losing streak under Pete Carroll. There's no team in the NFL that can say that during that tenure. It's impressive, right? I mean, they find a way to bounce back and win. In my eyes, look, if you look at the playoff picture and the teams that are ahead of them, the problem for them is the division record, and they lost the 2 of the Rams. And, division and conference record, they're going to be in trouble against the Packers and the Vikings if they play well. But here's the way I look at it. They got to win one of the next 2, at least, to have a chance. And then if they do, they've got a winnable finish for them. And I think they can. I think talent-wise, team-wise, are they better than some of these other teams that are in front of them? I do think that. But it's a tall task the next 2 weeks. That's the bottom line, and that's what they're up against right now.
Talking to Kevin Burkhardt, who's got the game on Sunday. How long have you now been in this spot? How long have you been the number 1 guy at Fox? 2 years? 3 years?
Yeah, this is too because when Joe and Troy went to ESPN last year, so second year here, and it's my 11th year at Fox.
Crazy. It honestly, it feels like you've been doing it longer in that spot. It's awesome, and I love you in there, and it's just been really cool. As you go around and meet the coaches and have your calls, what are you seeing with some of these young coaches that we hear a lot about here? Whether it's, and I don't know how many of them you've had a chance to meet, but between the Mike McDaniels and the Shane Steichen, just some of this next generation of coach, what do you think they're all about?
It's a really good question. I think that there is, I think with every young coach, or especially now, I think with every coach that is an offensive play caller that takes over a job, the balance is, commanding a room, having their personality deal with the team, and do I still call plays or do I give that up? And there have been multiple guys around the league that have done it a little differently, right? I think to me that's the fascinating part. Now, Mike McDaniel he's a blast. He's a little different, right? But everyone has their personality. We got to know Shane Steichen quite a bit. Did a million Eagles games last year. And his track record for what he did with the Chargers and Eagles kind of speaks for itself, and it's showing it again in Indianapolis with a backup quarterback, right? I mean, so just in terms of balancing, I think the offensive brilliance and running a room, I think is tough. And so guys that find a way to do that the best, those are the good coaches. I look at Green Bay as a prime example, right? Like LaFleur, he took a lot of crap last year. What went on in Green Bay was terrible. And people forget he won 13 games the first 3 years in the league. And obviously he and Aaron had some differences. Well, I think if you're on LaFleur, you feel pretty good right now. It's a group of, that team is so young, and, it took a little time, but he kind of stayed with it. So I think it's very interesting to have these different guys and how they handle a team. I'll use Philly again. Sirianni's another offensive guy. He decided not to call the plays. He's just focusing on being a head coach. I think that makes a big difference in how you run these teams. And I don't know that there's one right answer or wrong answer, but I think it's a little different than, A, the old school coach, and B, I think it's definitely different than a defensive coach that gets hired these days.
You ever wear that little KK jacket? Did you pull that out of the trash?
I have it.
No.
I have it in my house. My wife tells me that if I do something stupid, she'll wear it in public. That's the idea.
What was the filming session like for all of these bits that you guys have done? I can't recall anything quite like it. When did all that come about?
You know what? It was really fun. Gosh, our marketing guys came up with the whole idea, and it was we did all this in one day. It was like a 13-hour shoot in one day, and I just remember going in the shoot, and we saw the storyboards and stuff, and they were funny, and we had some input on it. It was great. And I walked in, and there's Olsen getting movie makeup and getting a bald head, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be unbelievable. And So we shot it all in one day, and it was just really funny. We had a crew that had done a lot of funny commercials, a director and producer that were great, and they were just like, okay, let's do it this way, let's try it this way. KB, can you do it like this? So I actually had fun. It was like kind of like a chance. It was kind of like an opportunity to act, for the first time in my life, and it was a blast.
Are there more to come?
People like them. That's all we have this year.
Okay.
But I will tell you the funny thing. You guys will appreciate this. Brock's asking me about the jacket, the little baby KK jacket. I think it's hilarious. I've had so many athletes call me that at the World Series, like a month ago. And it's funny. Like I don't take offense to it. I think it's hilarious. Like a month ago, we're doing a Cowboys game. We get on Zoom with Dak Prescott. And he sits down. He's like, "Little baby KK, what up, man?" I swear. And I rolled. Like it's turned into a kind of a life of its own. I think it's. I'm glad you guys enjoy it.
Well, it's good. I mean, you worked really hard to get to the very top of your profession.
That's right.
All the respect that comes with it, and now the athletes are calling you little baby KK. So I think that's really it's good for you. Nice job.
It's amazing. It's amazing. If you can't laugh at yourself, what are we doing, right, Mike? I mean,
last thing for me here, KB, is Brock Purdy. Salk a couple weeks ago, I think either before or maybe even after the San Francisco game when we chatted with Pete, kind of presented to Coach Carroll, like, how's this happen? All these man hours, all this money, all this time, all the investment that the scouting departments make, everybody commits to this, to finding the quarterback. And this guy is Mr. Irrelevant. And right now, I don't know, it's him and Hurts and Dak in the MVP race. And he puts up another 3 or 4 touchdowns Sunday and leads his team to the number 1 seed, may very well be the MVP. From your perspective, having met him, covered him, sit with him, talk to him, how in the world does Mr. Irrelevant become possibly Mr. MVP?
I think it's one of the greatest stories in the history of the league. It really is. And when you're around him, you see it. And I think this year he's really come out of his shell. Like I think, look, he's mentally tough. He's even keeled. But I think Brock, I'm sure you feel the same way, especially, playing the position. I'm kind of tired of the whole narrative of, it's just, because he's playing for Kyle. I think that narrative is BS. I think Kyle's system and with the way Kyle does it, he's incredible on a quarterback, and he puts people in a position to succeed. I don't think there's any question about it. But every other guy you just mentioned in there, Hurts, Dak, they've got plenty of weapons around them, right? Mm-hmm. I think when you look at the analytics and break down Brock's numbers and leading the league in yards per attempt and leading the league in deep ball throwing and leading the league in quarterback rating and the decisions that he makes. And by the way, he's under pressure a ton. Like, he is not standing back there, sitting back there, baking a cake in clean pockets. Okay. So I'm over the narrative of the Mr. Irrelevant narrative. And I think, to your point, how has it happened? I don't know how it happened, but I think it's one of the best stories ever. And I think it's very real. It's not a fluke. It's not always on a hot run. He is real. He may be the front runner for the MVP. And I just think it's time to separate a little bit that he played for Kyle Shanahan, because no disrespect to Kyle, I think is great. I think if Brock Purdy was playing anywhere else, he'd be just as good.
Well, then that leads me back to my last question here, which is, I guess, about Geno, because last year we were sitting here saying that Geno's story was one of the best in the league, and we couldn't really come up with too many like it other than maybe Rich Gannon, who kind of had that late career flourish, but there weren't a whole lot of Geno Smiths who got good again at that stage in their career. Where do you think he's at now, and where do you think that story is going?
Yeah, and I do think, especially, bringing up Geno, and look, I'm not saying coaching is not a part of it, and environment isn't a part of it, right? I think kudos to Seattle and their staff for making Geno feel empowered to get back to the guy that he was. I think that's a big part of it. I don't think he's too far off. I know some of the numbers say differently, but when I watch him play, I don't think he's too far off. I don't think he's been as sharp as last year. Like I said, I think the big part of it is, if you break down and go inside the numbers, a lot of it is the big play deep ball production that's been off. That's what's lagged a lot of the other numbers off. I think he's still doing a nice job in some of the other areas. I know he's been banged up too. I don't think he's that far off is the bottom line. But, it's put up or shut up time now. And I think he needs some help, right? He needs a little help on the offensive line. I'm not sure that DK and Lockett have been as good as last year. They're still good. So I don't know. I think blame goes around. I don't think it's all on him. I think he can pick it up in certain areas. And I think it's just got to start with some of the explosive plays.
Great stuff, man. This is so much fun. Thanks for spending a few minutes with us. This is great. Hopefully, we'll see you at a World Series with the Mariners next year. That doesn't seem to be the direction the team is currently looking to go, as they are eliminating payroll and starting to pull back from their nice gains over the last few years. But this is great. We really appreciate you taking the time here.
Yeah, guys, always enjoy it. Have fun watching the game, and hopefully we get a good one on Sunday.
Go kill it, little baby KK. Appreciate you, man.
There you go. There's Kevin.
Thanks, Brock. See ya.
Kevin Burkhardt of Fox Sports, who I really